Yeah, we're live. It is 7:10. I'm a little late. I just had to rush back from the store because I had to grab a new jump drive for my phone. So it took a little bit longer than I thought, but I'm here. And tonight we're talking about, if I want everybody, if it's the live guys or if you're coming in afterwards, I want you to take a good hard look at the thumbnail because what it picks is some interesting stuff. There's a lot there actually. That for one, it's a 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint turbo motor, which is awesome. Also, you'll notice that it has an air-to-water intercooler, which also is awesome. I upgraded from the air-to-air intercooler that was in there originally, so we used a core supplied by the guys at Kenny Bell, which was very cool. And you can see down in the right-hand corner as you're looking at it, in the right-hand corner, there's also what looks like a little red 1-gallon gas can. I don't know if it's 1 gallon or 2 gallons. It's one of those, but it's a little red gas can. That is not a gas can. That actually is our intercooler reservoir. And we also have another secondary heat exchanger that goes up. At the time that the photo was taken, I didn't have that yet because I didn't route it all in, because when we went to the Maxton Mile to set the land speed records, we didn't have the secondary heat exchanger in because we didn't need it for what we were doing. We were only running standing mile stuff. So what we did was, I remember how frustrating it was. This is kind of a funny story. The little 1-gallon gas can used to hold our water for the intercooler, but we'd also, before we'd make the run, we would put ice water in it. But because of the opening in the gas can, we'd have to stick the ice cubes in there one at a time. So as you might imagine, I mean, you want it as full as you can. So it took a long time to take the ice bag, grab the cubes out individually, and feed them in there. This whole time we're thinking, oh, I'm definitely wanting to cut the lid off of this thing really badly. We just didn't want it to be spilling if something should happen. But that was our air-to-water intercooler, and we had a little pump, and it circulated it through the intercooler, and that worked really, really well. In fact, I wish that I had, for some reason, I deleted all of what I called the Sprint log, and that was me from the very first day that I bought this car and did the things necessary to get it running right, a tune-up and all that stuff. And I immediately took it out to our Area 52, did our top secret test facility outside of Vegas, and did some top speed runs on it because I wanted to see what it did when it was stock, because it was all stock exhaust, stock air-to-air intercooler, everything was stock on it. And we were running on 91 octane and stuff, and I monitored the temperature before and after. We monitored the pressure, obviously, and made runs like that. And then I did that again after all of the upgrades that I did to it, because we did a lot of things to it. So it's fairly cool. Bigger exhaust and more boost, and obviously a different intercooler as we showed there. Ice water, more boost. I didn't ever change the turbo. I would do that later on after we got back from the land speed stuff. When we did the Maxton Mile, the clutch started slipping, so we ended up putting a new ACT clutch in it, and that helped out a lot. But we never went back to the Maxton Mile because that was on one coast and I was on another, and so it was a long, lengthy road trip to go over there with my buddy Jimmy from HP Performance, which was awesome. But that shows, in addition to all of those cool things that I have gone off on a tangent now about. The other thing that it shows I want to talk about tonight is, if you look at that photo very carefully, you'll see that there is a vacuum line coming from the throttle body or intake manifold. It's actually behind the throttle body, so it's on the intake manifold. There's a vacuum line. That's the source for I have a manual wastegate controller, then going down to the wastegate, but then we've also teed off of that and gone to, you see also one of the upgrades that I made on this. And I did this. We did this actually before I did the air-to-water intercooler, because it was also on the other setup. We put an aluminum tile blow-off valve to replace. I think it had a plastic one on there before, so we did that one. And so I have the line teed off, and so one of it's the boost reference line or vacuum when we close the throttle, because when you're going wah 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 through all the gears and then you let off the gas, then vacuum is created in the intake manifold, and that's what opens the bypass valve, and that opens basically a portal to stop the big pressure wave that happens, because turbos is like, hey, we're still going, we're going, and then the throttle body shuts and all of this air backs up. There's a big pressure buildup, and then it doesn't have anywhere to go, so it reverses backwards because you got forward momentum, and then that energy pushes it backwards. It goes backwards out to the turbo and tries to stop the spinning turbo. and surges the turbo, which is not good. It sounds terrible, and it's not good for it, and a lot of guys still do it, and they want that noise. But if you open a bypass valve and allow that pressure to escape, it's better for the turbo. So that's why that's there, and that's why that opens up under vacuum. It does not open up under boost. In fact, under boost, it helps hold it closed because that's the design of the piece. But here's the question, and the question is, the way that I have this teed, obviously we're running to a manual boost controller, which basically is just a vacuum leak. It's just a bleed. So the thing is, I'm also leaking the reference going to the wastegate as well. And so, and the reason that I point this out is we use this a lot, and it worked pretty well. But the thing is that a lot of people do this, and they'll tee off of that, and they'll wonder why they have problems with other things. Oh, my blow-off valve's not working or whatever. And because and especially if you're turning the wastegate controller out where you have a lot of bleed, it becomes more problematic. And especially if those two things, like we have a fairly good length of line between those, but if they're close, then you start throwing the signal off even more to the other thing. And that's the deal. So the ideal situation is to have a big enough plenum, basically, and then have multiple fittings coming off of your plenum, a dedicated one going to your leaky wastegate controller, essentially, and then one going that's dedicated and not going to anything else. It's just going to your bypass valve, so that it can have a smooth, consistent signal. And I know what you're thinking, but Richard, it has a leak anyways. It's leaking in the manifold. Yes, but not very much. And the leak is a long ways away from where the manifold is. So the manifold actually isn't going to see this sort of change in signal, because it has to be a big change in there for it to affect other things that are attached to that common plenum. So it's much less problematic that way. That's the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to not have a leak and have some kind of boost controller that's electronically controlled, and so that it's not leaking all the time. And there are better ways to do it. But we all use these fish valves, and this one is a super cool Ability aluminum anodized fish valve. But basically that's what it is. It's just a bleed orifice. We're just tricking the signal to the wastegate, and it worked very well. We used it a lot. In fact, that particular manual wastegate controller has probably been used. Not probably, I'm certain that it has been used on more motors and more tests than any other wastegate controller in the history of wastegate controllers, because I've had it for decades, and I've used it on, I don't know, lots and lots of engines, and lots of different things, and lots of boosts. So it's always worked really well, as they do. I mean, it's just a simple bleed orifice, so it works pretty well. I really like the photo of the Sprint engine compartment, because I like when I look at that, I kind of go back down memory lane and go, oh yeah, that's right, we did this, we did that, and we did all these things. And underneath, you can't see that we ported the head though, and cleaned it up and surfaced it, and did a different valve job, and played things with the injectors. And one thing that I never did that I wanted to do that now I would definitely do if I had one is that I definitely would want to play with cam timing. I was a little bit more interested in the balance between power and I was trying to have the thing get really good mileage at the time too. So I wanted the balance there. So wilder cam timing definitely wouldn't have probably helped with the fuel mileage, although maybe we could have done something with it. Maybe retarding it might have helped with the fuel mileage. We'd have to see. But what the thing needed was more camshaft. It needed, and we didn't port the head. We ported the head for fuel mileage. We didn't port the head for more power. And I know you're thinking, well, what's the difference? It's subtle. We didn't do a lot. We were most interested in the valve job and the transition from the bowl to the seat. And when I say we hardly took any away, I mean, we just barely kissed the bowl area. And so again, I was just more interested in what was happening with the fuel mileage and doing direct back-to-back tests without changing a whole bunch of stuff. So all that worked out very well, and it was a cool project. And I eventually would do a compound setup on that motor, and we would turn the boost pretty far up, as far as I could, basically with putting clicks in the vane meter and stuff. We kept trying to put some sort of standalone setup on it, but we could never get it to work on a 3-cylinder for some reason. That now could be cured, I'm sure, if I had one of those. I do still have an engine, so I can one of those, or a motor. I know, I just love it. I do still have one of those, so I could run one of those on the engine dyno. We could try some of this stuff, and I would like to try a fully ported head, like fully built. I'd like to try to go after the head a lot more and get some more flow out of it, and then definitely do cam timing. I know at the very least I could slot the sprocket so that we could advance and retard it. That wouldn't be a problem. And then also I'd like to have a cam ground for it. If I can get something with 10 or 15 or 20 degrees more duration and a bit more lift, the thing would definitely wake up. It would definitely make more power. And I think with I don't remember now if I honestly can't remember if I changed the factory ring gap, because I don't think I took apart the short block on that thing. I think we ran it the way that it was. Yeah, I don't think we did. I'd have to go back and look. We should. So if I was going to turn the boost way up, we would probably at least take a look at it, at least pull one out and go, oh yeah, those are fine. And then I made a custom intake for that as well, so I'd like to try that. There are some cool things. I made a different exhaust manifold that I use for chassis dyno only, because it basically stuck out the front of where the radiator area was. We took the AC and stuff off, which was a terrible idea. But I wanted to get rid of the weight and make more power, and get better mileage, which you definitely would. But it was miserable driving and living in Vegas with a car that had no AC, and then driving to West Tech, which is also hot too. Not quite as bad as Vegas, but certainly in the hundreds and stuff. And so it was tough. But it makes you tough. So that's the discussion for tonight. And so if you're looking at and the reason I bring that up is because looking at that was cool, but more than that, whenever I do the stuff at West Tech and we're doing some sort of boosted thing, especially a turbo, and especially if it's two turbos. So if it's two turbos and two wastegates, and if we're running a wastegate controller, it's like you put the motor on and you're like, oh, that looks pretty good. Then you start putting the turbo stuff around, you're like, it's getting a little bit busy. And then you put all the hoses and everything on, you're like, oh man, now it's just ridiculous. So I have for the longest time wanted to build like a manifold basically for all the fittings that have to go there, because otherwise we've got to drill or more often than not, because a lot of times we're using composite manifolds, we have to just run 15 or 20 different T's and zip tie everything, and then we're looking for lengths of hose, and we keep cutting them, and pretty soon all the hose is about this long and it just does nothing for you. So what I want to do is just make a common plenum manifold for all of these things. That way, if I just have one big one coming off of the intake, or if we have a couple, we just need to run that, and then we can shoot those off of the common manifold. I've been wanting to do that for maybe 20 years or something, and I just have not done it. So that's on my list. And speaking of lists, we talked about lists the other night, making lists. I'm going to be doing an early morning live feed for you guys too, as an incentive for you guys to get your projects going. So that's what we're going to be talking about on those. I'm going to be telling you about what I did the day before that was automotive related to get my stuff ready. Whatever it is, I'm picking up engines, I'm cleaning them, I'm testing, whatever I'm doing. I'm going to tell you how the projects are coming along and what I've been doing to try to do it, and try to get you guys going on yours, because we're coming into winter, and for a lot in California, that's not that big a deal. We just keep working on stuff. It's the same. But in other parts of the country, it gets snow and miserable, and people don't do that. Some guys do. Some guys are hardcore, and they're out there, freezing in the shop or heating the shop or whatever they got to do and get it done. So I just want to provide some incentive, and for you guys, let's get out there. Let's get one thing done. And that's why you have the list. If you look today, even if you got to write it in there because it wasn't on the list, you add it to the list like we were talking about last night. If it's just, look, I painted a wheel cylinder or door handle or hooked up vacuum lines or whatever it is, as long as it's something that you did that you can now, you are now one step, might be a baby step, but whatever it is, you're one step closer to getting that thing running. And like I showed on the Omni deal, we didn't do it perfect. I mean, it's not, we're going to redo some of it, but we didn't do it perfect. But I had a time frame and I had a goal, and both of those had to be met. And so to do that, we had to just do stuff to get it working and be able to drive it and get it running. And so if you use that approach, you'll get stuff done. You're like, look, it's going to be done by a week from Thursday. It has to. That's my deadline. That's going to happen. So then if you get that in your mindset and then you work until that happens, then it gets done. And then you, after that, then all you do is look back and go, yeah, remember when I did all that? Yeah, there's stuff that you didn't do while you were doing that, and stuff that should have been done while you're doing that, and all that. But now it's done, and now you can do other things. Now you can take care of that stuff. So it's important. So that's what we're going to be talking about on the morning stuff, and we'll be talking about some of this kind of stuff too. But it's really good, and I'm excited about it because I'll wake up and be the morning Joe for hopefully lots of people. That would be good. So I want to see what's going on with you guys tonight. If you guys have not already, please take a look at the video that I just posted, and it's of us putting mostly the guys from the car farm. All I did was nuts and bolts and that kind of stuff. Taking exhaust off and the drive shafts and all of it. It's all really not hard stuff. The only thing that I've never done is I don't know where all the plugs and everything come off of the transmission. But yeah, we took the old transmission out, put the new one in. I did some posts on when we were doing that about, hey, should I just reuse the stock converter? No, don't use that. So I bought another converter. We flushed the cooler out, which I'm glad we did because it had a lot of dirty fluid in it. We got the clean stuff going in there. So the transmission, for those of you that don't know, the transmission worked perfectly all the way back. I first drove it from Ohio down to Kentucky to see my good buddy Brian Tooley, and then drove from Kentucky back home to California, and it worked flawlessly. Obviously, it wasn't under the same kind of load as when I went out there because I wasn't towing the Omni anymore. It was just the truck. So I felt a little bit better about that, but it just was like, for most of the thing, it was just like cruise control out there, just chewing up miles, and it worked great, and it's still working great. So awesome. Thanks to the guys at the car farm again. And if you haven't watched that video, go check it out. There's some funny stuff in there that happened while we were doing it. Plus that we get to see the cool tool that we used to that Ben used to get the vent plug, and it's very important because without it, it was just going to keep blowing fluid out the dipstick, and that was not a good situation. That was not good to put all of that time and effort into it and then be driving it around. And we knew that it shifted because we checked it before we even drove it. Or I drove it out. But when I got back, it was like, it's smoking and stuff. And I'm not out there like street racing or doing burnouts or anything. I'm just driving it down the road, just make sure that it shifts. Because on your first drive, you should be easy on it because maybe you didn't fill it all the way. Maybe you overfilled it. Maybe you didn't hook something up. Maybe a vent tube is clogged. Whatever the thing is, go out and go easy on your first one, and then you have plenty of time to do silly stuff later on. So it was just easy that I came back and I'm like, yeah, it's smoking pretty bad. We didn't spill that much in this thing, and whatever we would have spilled would have already burned off, and I didn't remember spilling any on the exhaust manifolds anyway, or on the exhaust. But we were grabbing it and stuff with your hands, so stuff burns off. We see that on the dyno too when we're putting headers on or whatever, and you start it up, running, it gets hot, and you're like, oh yeah, there's smoke coming off there, and then pretty soon there's no more smoke coming off there because it burns all the stuff off that you put on there with your hands. That's especially true when we're doing cam swaps and things like that. We take the valve covers off, stuff leaks out. We're taking rockers off, we're taking the headers off, put the headers back on. Now the headers have oily handprints on them, and then those things burn out or burn off. And so that's what happened on this thing. And I thought, well, this shouldn't be still smoking. And that's what it was. It's when you take the dipstick out and stuff just shoots out, you're like, oh yeah, there's pressure in that. It's probably not good. But after we fixed the vent tube with that super cool tool, all of it worked out great after that. Now it's driven home and runs like a champ, which was good. That's how they break it in. That's it exactly. I need to come up with a poll, obviously. Okay, so the poll for today. Have you ever had a boost line come off of a manual wastegate controller? Have you ever, and this, it could be pulled off, it could come off, it could burn off, which is actually fairly common. We had it happen at Bonneville, because the way that we had it packaged, the wastegate was very, very hot, as you might imagine. And the line going down, we had to burn off at the wastegate, not at the controller, but the line running from the controller to the wastegate just melted. We didn't have a good enough hose or something on it, and it just melted. And then actually all of our boost went away, so it's not good, because it was the lower line. So, have you ever had a boost line come off of a manual wastegate controller? I'm just gonna put wastegate controller. It could be electric too, just any wastegate controller. Let's see, working on an Audi 1.8 turbo 20 valve for the first time. Plastic coolant hose but firewall crack. Yeah, I had the heater hoses on the Silverado were like that too. The ones going, I think they were up at the firewall though. Those were cracked. And then we had some of the AC lines were bad too that we replaced with Mark Sanchez. The transmission did not come with a warranty, although it probably does from Summit, because this was a rebuilt one from Summit. It was still new in the paper and stuff, but he didn't have any paperwork with it. Morning chats, I'm going to try to do at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Boost cut is necessary. Yeah, that's a really good idea in the ECU. The Dodge Omni has that. It has an overboost feature, which is good. Yeah, the Car From dudes are good. They're good people. I know people don't subscribe to that theory. They subscribe to the run it like you stole theory. That's good. That's good on them. They get to do it. They get to do it however they want. The hose vent also goes to the transfer case. Yes, they are teed together. Road draft instead of a PCV. The Trophy 4-cylinder had a road draft tube. Gets can off the dipstick tube, then drains back into the pan via a new fitting. Aaron, would the streetability of a 7675 be better or the same as a 7875? I think that they would be pretty comparable, because if they both have the same hot side, I think that that's kind of what's going to determine the spool and the streetability. Please don't be Morning Joe. I don't really know what that is, or who that is, but I'm just going to be me. Dipsticks on GM cars sealed because the fluid expands when towing. It will come out the old vent dipstick and blow out the exhaust manifold and cause, yeah. No, it's 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm in California. IO3 starts surging at 15 psi. It shouldn't surge at 15 psi. Why would you get it? See, I guess you could get up closer to the surge line as you go up and boost. Yeah, Larry, where were you, man? We were going to do the poll without you. I subscribe to the proper braking procedure, whatever it is.
If it's a brand new thing, like an engine or transmission, a break-in is a good idea. I remember when my first motor that was ever done with my dad in my Camaro, we rebuilt the 350 in it. And I remember he said you can't go wide open throttle until 500 miles. I put 500 miles on it. That's the break-in. I'm like, God, that's so hard to do, especially since we just put a shift kit in it. Anyway, chirp second. Scott, does my name ring a bell from back in the SC drag racing days? Cashwell Syntec. So were you a sponsored guy? Yesterday you said heat range is a minor thing for detonation. I think it's a good thing. It's a good hedge against detonation, but it doesn't really change power very much. I would like to see, and I've never seen. That's an interesting point. I don't recall ever seeing. Like I'd like to see an actual change in the detonation threshold with different heat ranges, and that would be a difficult test because it'd have to be a laboratory kind of thing to find out if that does anything, and it also have to be an actual dynamic equation. I don't think that they could do that with the spark plug the way that they typically do like octane testing. I think it actually have to be in a running loaded motor. And that would be cool to see if we had one that was a heat range 6, like a stock one, and then go to a heat range 10 or 11 or something. Go to an extreme and see if there's a change. Can spooling a turbo without the cold side connected? Are you just spinning the impeller then? Cause a turbo to overspool. I don't know about overspool. Are you talking about spinning the turbo too fast? I don't think you'll be able to spin the turbo too fast because I just don't think you're going to build up very much. You're not going to build up very much exhaust energy because you have no boost going into the motor. You should do a thing on proper PCV setup on turbo cars and catch cans and such. That would be good, actually. That's very good. And LSs particularly, I think they don't have enough crankcase ventilation. A stock LS doesn't, especially if the guys want to connect. Like we see a lot of guys, and this is maybe more so back in the day. Hopefully they have changed their position a little bit on this, but they want to hook all the same things back up the way that they were. They want to hook everything back up to the manifold, and you can't do that on a boosted car. What we do when we run it on the dyno is we have a big opening. We have a baffled valve cover basically with a big like 3/4 inch hose running off of the valve cover. And if it's long enough, we usually just vent it back to the back behind the dyno. Because the oil or the valve cover is baffled, so no oil is going to come out. It would just get, crankcase pressure coming out of it if you had that. If you have blow by, you could see that. And sometimes we'll turn the fan off in the dyno when we're idling the motor, when we're revving the motor, to see if that's the case, see if there's anything there. But you don't want all of that going back into the manifold. It does have a Corvette servo in it. Somebody asked that. What is the up and down side for towing with a turbo? I think that's a good combination. A small motor like a 4.8 or 5.3. I talked to Chad for a long time about towing with that. And I think that I've asked guys out there, have you done this? And I have a lot of them saying yes, that they do this with 5.3s and 4.8s, and they do it with turbos on them, and they tow their vehicles, and they work. The tune, even more so than driving around on a regular weight vehicle, becomes even more critical. And then heat management becomes ultra critical too, because it might be that you're towing at 3,000 RPM with a fair bit of throttle and a fair bit of boost. And if you're lugging up a big mountain grade, you might only be going 50 or 60 miles an hour. So you got to make sure that your cooling system is up to the task of that additional power that it's taking to do that. The nice thing, though, is that whereas before on your naturally aspirated combination, and I know this speaking from experience from towing the Omni up some of the hills in Wyoming and near Salt Lake City and stuff, and even going over some of the passes here in California, that you have to run, your near wide open throttle a lot. And you won't be more than likely with a turbo combination because you'll have so much more power. If you now have another 100 or 150 foot-pounds of torque, now going up the hill is a part throttle thing. But if you're part throttle under boost, you got to make sure that you're still under boost. So you're going to be in the boost table. You just got to make sure that you have the timing right and that you have the airfield right and that you have the cooling system can take care of that extra power. The intercooler's working, that you have a good cold air source. All of those things become more critical. And then a lot of guys that are towing, it's a really good idea to run like premium gas. Eric, your TV's not working, so I'm I'm your only hope. Jack, 3 horsepower per cubic inch for naturally aspirated combos be overcome. Yes, race motors do that a lot. I mean, if you look at a Formula One motor, a naturally aspirated Formula One motor, I think it's a good bit over that. I helped out the Mopar team get real fast. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear some of those stories. No fun blowing the tips of spark plugs off. No, that's not. It would be really, really nice if they would make the spark plug to where that was the fusible link, that you blow an electrode off and just melt it so that it all goes away and doesn't get lodged in anywhere and start scraping the walls and break something, or get stuck in between a valve and hang the valve open. That would be nice if that was the case. So then you take it out, you're like, oh, yep, nick that plug, and then you put another one in, and you go, okay, I need to de-spice the tune a little bit. But usually when you break an electrode on a plug, we start looking for other stuff that broke. Santa Fe blue, that's right. The best color for any Omni. I keep hitting the like button. It keeps toggling back and forth. What's going on? Does the old legend about crankcase vacuum helping ring still have any validity? Yes, lots. In fact, that's what a vacuum pump does, and so it works pretty well. There's a limit to it because then you start sucking seals in, but a vacuum pump works really well. What do you think about water to air cooling for a GSR platform, or just run a big boy intercooler? Most people run air to air out on the street. On the Sprint, I ran air to water and I loved it, and it worked fantastic. I've run those air to water also on Vortex stuff. And again, if you're not, I wouldn't pick an air to water for running the Silver State like I did. I would pick an air to air because you have 150, 60, 70, whatever, 200 miles an hour worth of airflow going into it. I wouldn't, however, pick that for Bonneville because we don't want that much airflow going through the cooler. And also at Bonneville, we can run ice water. So ice water is way better than any air-to-air will ever be. And that way also at Bonneville, we can fence off everything so that we can get better aerodynamics, because that becomes a critical thing. That's just like adding power. So at Bonneville is a different thing. On the street, I think I would go air-to-air. Although, like I said, I did do on my Sprint. It worked very good. We're trying for 2 horsepower per cubic inch is usually a pretty big hurdle. 3 horsepower per cubic inch is like way, way, way racy stuff. Radiator hoses, yeah. they're like heater hoses normally, or what we use, and we use the same thing for intercooler hoses too. The only way they'll bark the tires in second gears with the Corvette servo. It does have that. I don't know if I have enough power to bark a. Chris, greetings. Glad to see the Santa Fe blue in your vlogs. Yeah, we'll keep doing lots of stuff on that because we're doing a lot with that, and then I'll be down doing the engine dyno stuff on those motors too. I have an early an 84 2.2, and then I have a later 2.5. What's the best size twin turbo for an Escalade? I'll install a stage 1 or stage 2 truck cam with roller rockers. Looking for 6 or 700 horsepower. 2 3076s probably would do that, and give you room to grow. 2 GT3582s would also do that. Where's pizza? I know it definitely is dinner time. I feel like I'm the only 4-cylinder guy on these lives. You're not. I am. I'm a 4-cylinder guy and a 3-cylinder guy and a 6-cylinder guy and a 10 and a 12 and a rotary. All of it's good. Guardsman blue. That is a good one too. My wife really likes the we were looking at Vipers a long time ago. She's like, "Ooh, yeah, I like the blue one with the white stripes," and that's a Cobra Guardsman blue with Wimbledon white. I think was the color of the white stripes. Air-to-air intercoolers are fine as long as they're headlight to headlight. You can do a lot. As you saw, if you take a look at the video that I have up, you can see the comparison between air-to-air and air-to-water run on the dyno. They're very, very comparable when you're using, regular kind of temperature water. I'd be happy with 1 horsepower per cubic inch with my LD28. Fascia span, too much crankcase vacuum can prevent the oil pump from sucking up oil too. I wonder how much that would have to be to make that happen. What cam would you lean towards? Daily driver, F4TE specs. What's that? What motor is this for? What's your go-to cheap oil? Whatever is cheap at the wrecking or at the auto parts store when I go there. STP stuff, I think that the AutoZone has cheap stuff like that. Metric formula I was always told was 100 horsepower per liter for a 2-valve head and no power adders. 100 horsepower per liter is not that hard for a 2-valve motor. Like an LS, 100 horsepower per liter, it'd be 620 horsepower from a 6.2 liter. So that's certainly possible. I mean, lots of guys have done that. So I think the number is going to be higher than that. The number that we looked for when I was doing Engine Masters was, I didn't ever get anywhere near 2 horsepower per cubic inch on the Engine Masters, but I was at like 165 or 166, I think, on mine. And again, I wasn't looking for a big specific peak power output number. We were looking for average power production. So it had a really good combination of specific power and, important for us, a specific torque output. Problem with too much crankcase vacuum is that oiling to the piston pins goes away. Yeah, 20 inches would be way more than I've seen on the testing that we've done. Usually it's below 15 on the stuff that I've seen at Westech. What's good wide open throttle time for a stock 5.3 on 12 pounds on 93? Nope, good luck with that. But it'd be like 12 degrees. Maybe 14. I think Matt's is the thing. His rule of thumb is 14 pounds and 14 degrees. Scott, I introduced the Denso Iridium spark plugs for a line for Denso. Oh, cool. Iridium spark plugs, a game changer. We run liquid intercoolers on speed demon back in 2008. My company did the intake and fuel system. That's very cool stuff. I've used the Iridium stuff a lot. We ran it in the Civic when we set the records out at Bonneville with those, and the Denso guys had supplied a bunch to the guys at Westech. So we've used them a lot. Like I think we ran IQs, probably 31s in most of the things that were high boost. I used to be a Quaker State guy for 20 years. Now I'm Valvoline. I've used Mobil 1 and Redline, which I love the guys from Redline. They were awesome. I would use their stuff more because of the people that were there. They were just fantastic. The guys from Lucas Oil are awesome. We've used their stuff a lot, and all of this stuff has worked really well for me. Like I do with most things, I look at the big picture. Does it have oil? Does it not have oil? Okay. Now, judging by what kind of engine it is, what the bearing clearances are, what the thing likes, now what weight should I choose? And should I use synthetic? If it's free and somebody gave it to me, we'll normally go that way. Or not. For wrecking yard motors, very rarely would I put synthetic in it. I would just put oil in it. And then after it behaved and showed that it was going to cooperate, we might treat it nicer a little bit later on. Because the first, like in a wrecking yard motor, the first 5 quarts of oil that you put in the junkyard LS is just a cleansing thing anyways. It gets rid of a lot of stuff. And then you change that, and it's usually going to be really, really dark. And then things get better. And then it deserves the good stuff. The Engine Masters Challenge is not being done anymore. Neil, you can run low tension oil rings. That's fine. If guys run low tension rings, what they'll do is run what the heck are they called? My glasses broke. You see, it's only being held on really well by one side. Somebody tell me what the rings are called that have the pressure from back behind them. Dan's gonna know what it is. I just can't remember the name right now. 1 millimeter rings. Yeah, that's pretty small. Richard just pulled a 2005-7 vet motor, spun a rod bearing last night, put a new oil pump in, didn't use the right O-ring for the pickup, so it blew out. SPSO idle, but it died. The motor won't run because of the oil pump pickup? Gas ported, that's it. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Yeah. Getting 6-liter idle, block 20 over, plan to use 862 heads, split Texas speed cam, should you feel a gain? Compared to what, Brian? But yes, we're just going to say yes. How much gap on the rings? If it's boosted, we go 28 to 30. The fiery side of me wants to turbo my truck, but better part of me wants to say NA and tow something that that's actually fast. It's hard not to do stuff to the. I like to have something that's not going to break. Obviously, that didn't happen. But which is, everybody's telling me you need to have a turbo on there, you need to have a cam, and I'm like, I don't think that the transmission is going to last, and obviously there was a reason for that. But if you have another car that's a race car or a racy car, I would do that and just leave your tow vehicle or your daily thing alone. It's nice to have it's nice to have something that's reliable. So how's our thing doing here? Have you ever had a boost light come up on a wastegate controller? 64% saying no. So lots of guys haven't ever melted one or had to pull off or had somebody sabotage you in the pits. The Engine Master Challenge. Oh, so Racer D was Dave was he was definitely a contestant there. Engine Masters died because the University of Northwestern Ohio did not want to host it anymore. So finding a place to run it was very hard. I think the last year's was run at Diamond Pistons, but the location was not good. Okay. Zero gap ring for the second. I wouldn't do that. I don't think you need to, because we're putting extra gap in them anyways. And for a turbo application, you don't need to be worried about little things like that. If a gapless ring adds a little bit of power, you don't care. You have boost that would go above and beyond anything that a ring would do. I gas ported the piston on my bicycle airfoot pump. Yeah, I would listen to Dan. He probably knows. He's probably tested that. The thinnest rings that I personally work on were 11 thousandths. Current cup stuff is 20 thousandths. So that's less than 1 millimeter, right? The oil pump pickup tube has an O-ring to the oil pump. Yep, I'm familiar. oil pumps come with multiple O-rings for whichever style O-ring, so no pressure. He spun 2 rod bearings. So did he put the wrong O-ring in there? Was there no pickup? Did he have no oil pressure? Do you have an open ring gap on the 7 to 9 psi Gen 462 turbo setup? The problem is that you don't know what it is right now if you haven't taken it apart. What if it's 10 or 12 and you run boost and you run boost for any length of time? Even if you're running low boost for an extended period of time, you can get lots of ring heat in there and you can pinch the ring. So you just don't know what it is. You know, I would say, I always tell people, well, at least take one out and check it and see what it is. If it's 10 or 12 or 15, you may want to think about doing it. But since you've already taken it out, you should do it, and you should just do all of them. Because I don't know of anybody that just runs 7 pounds and just stays at 7 pounds. Almost nobody does that. Fan spurring again, yeah. Should have raced the blue Omni versus the black one. The blue Omni was not ready to race yet. Is it the wrong time to talk transmission? No, it's not too soon. Transmission, I have the old one in the back of the truck. I'm hopefully going to take it over, and if I can get a hold of Oliver, and maybe we'll take it apart, and so we can see the broken sun shell maybe, and see what else is in there. It would be interesting to take a look at it. What happens if the boost line comes off the boost controller? It depends on how you have the controller hooked up. If you're going to the top and bottom line, it depends on which line it is. Normally, like if you just have a line like we did going to the bottom of the wastegate, you just lose boost, which is what you want to happen. If you have both of them hooked up and you lose a line going to the bottom of it and you only have a line going to the top of it and that's not leaking, then you'd have a trouble. Then you'd have lots and lots of boost. You'd have all the boost. You'd have whatever the turbo would do. The blue Omni would not beat the black Omni. The black Omni was running a lot more boost and stuff. And he had ported head. Dimpled cylinder rolls. Yeah, runaway diesels are not good. On a wastegate line melt, and don't use vital snowmobile fuel hose as boost reference line. I was driving around for it and started doing a rolling burnout. Went from 6 to 14 psi. Just tore down a 350,000 mile 5.3, never broke open, and had 8 thousandths ring gap, which to me was tiny. That's the tightest I've ever seen it. I've never seen one that tight. I have seen some that are in the low teens, though, ones that have come apart with lots and lots of miles like that. And so I've told people, and you try to tell people, they all say the thing that they want to be true. Like, oh yeah, it's got lots of miles on it. That's just instant free ring gap. Yeah, take a look at. You can still see the crosshatch in the bore. That bore didn't wear very much, so you're gonna have to hope that the ring wore. And my guess is that it didn't, because there didn't seem to be a correlation between ring gap and mileage on the dozens of LS motors that I've taken apart and checked. So that's what caused my engine to blow up. 1970 Impala, excellent starting point. 5.3 swap car, have twins, full interior, and be heavy at like 700 to 800. Will I be okay with the built 700 R4? I'd like overdrive. An overdrive would be a good idea. I would pick a 4L80 instead of a 700 R4. The 700 R4 is like a 4L60. It's going to have to be really beefy to withstand that kind of, because the other thing that you're now putting on it is a fairly heavy vehicle. It's going to have a lot of load. Have you ever done any testing on a Gm3800 V6? Yes, I have a whole series up on the the Series 2 and Series 3 supercharged ones that we also ran turbos on, or a turbo on, and a turbo and a blower on, and NA, and ran intake manifolds, and now we're going to do a big bang on one of those. I scrapped a 2.5 turbo Chrysler turbo block due to dimpled cylinders. That's usually not good. Broken piston left an impression on the cylinder. Yep. I don't know how much gap my 5.3 has with 545,000 miles. You should take a look at stuff like that. You'd be surprised at how little those things wear. My crosshatch 2, another one I did, less miles, almost none. A lot of it is going to have to do with how well they're taken care of. CO2 fire extinguishers are good. The 204R was in the International. Ben, I don't know. Was that the question about the was the ring gap spec at 12? I think they have a range from the factory. I think 12 probably would be on the low side. The 5.3 has 350,000 on it, so it's just getting broken in. Let it turbo it. That'll work good. Yeah, there's lots of 3800 stuff up there because I've been doing a bunch of it. It would probably be a 4L80E because did they even make a 4L80 that's not computer controlled? My sound is breaking up. Choppy sound. Please, cousin. How's that? It's because I got the chop monster. Here, let me plug and unplug it. What are you guys doing? What am I bringing something here? Is that better? I can't hear the fan over there. Because the other fan's not going, so it's got to be the fan in the computer. It's feedback. It's RF. Captain Gray, what is your problem? Let me scroll back and see what your question was. So you feel all warm and fuzzy. Oh, there we go. I didn't even see that. How did I miss that? How did I miss a question about a Chevy Sprint Turbo? 87 Chevy Sprint runs high RPM for about 5 minutes until engine warms up or vacuum line's a problem. So do the RPMs go down after the engine warms up? Those things probably have a temperature idle speed control like Honda does. I would check that and make sure that it's not stuck or not functioning properly. See, if you have it, you should have said, "Hey, Richard, I had a Sprint question," because I didn't see that for some reason. Factory gap was way more than 8,000. Yeah. I don't know how would I miss that. Did my audio get better? It's on the drivetrain channel. I'm probably not going to do that. Let's see if I can move this over a little bit. You guys, how's that? Tell me if that's it. If that's get better. I'm going to put a shield between the mic and the. It's normal now. Yeah, it came back. Magnetic hat. Yeah, I do like non-computer controlled transmissions better too. It's rattling a fan. That's probably the fan from my computer. You're in the middle of a long answer with a Sprint question flowed past. Oh, okay. I was soapboxing. It's not my soapbox. Tinfoil hats are good. It's hard to find tinfoil anymore. A 4L80E, I would need a controller. My Barry White voice. I don't know if I can do Barry White. He's pretty cool. I don't know if I have that much cool. I'll look at my. I even ordered this on the line. Oh, I just love that movie. I like the if you've seen the I don't know if he does it on Facebook or does it on Instagram. It's Bat Dad. He runs around with his little bat hat on, talking to his kids and his wife and stuff. Jen. He's hilarious. You'll never find. No, I can't get the Barry White thing going. But I would wear a tinfoil hat though. Does anybody know if there is a non-electronic 4L80 a Turbo 400, but it doesn't have the overdrive though. Ford AODE. I think is a 727. That's not an overdrive though, right? The multi-point fuel injection was an 86. Fan noise follows me to West Tech. That's because I have my laptop does that too. My Toyota 22R, the jillion miles, no runs, no oil changes. No oil changes. You got to change the oil in it. Bought a Gran Torino for $500 back in 1980. I was going to say it'd be hard to find one now. 351 Windsor, burn 1 quart every 50 miles. That's excessive. Look out the window and see the smoke. Wish I kept it. Yeah, it probably had a. What I did on my Camaro was we broke a piece of ring off and it turned sideways and wedged and made a little groove, a locating groove, basically. Karen, did they make a 4L80 that's not a 4L80E? I didn't know if they did one. Turbo 400 with a gear benders, that would be the analog version of that. Okay, so A518 is a 727 with an overdrive. On NHRA stockers, going from a 727 to a 904 was good for, wow, 1.7 tenths. How much boost can a stock LS 6-liter block handle? All of it. We've done 1500 and we're not anywhere near the block. You're going to break the crank and the rod, or not the crank. You're going to break the rods and pistons first on stock stuff. When guys go beyond that much, they start thinking about another block because they start worrying about cap shift and stuff. What do you guys think about turbocharging a stock 2003 Crown Vic? Is it a 2-valve 4.6? I have lots of 2-valve stuff. I also have lots of 4-valve stuff, so you can kind of see what those can do. People keep sending me ads for Chevettes. Are any of them cheap? Chevettes are kind of cool. Bought a Gran Torino 87 from a Cowboy. Yeah, they're definitely cool. Coolio. Well, Jose, when we're asking questions, we need to make sure that we don't use the word thoughts. That's forbidden here. Ask the question. LS versus K24 block strength boosted work on K24 today. Sound like a diesel mill everywhere. Oil started knocking after changing into a turbo build. I don't think a K24 is going to be able to make the power that an LS does, only because it's not nearly as big. Almost got my 72 Chevelle LS swap done. Good. Is it a carbureted one? Is it a fuel injected one? What'd you put in it? Going from an 081 to a 416 head, 305 head. It's an 081. I'm pretty fluent on small blocks, but I don't know. I know what a 416 head is. How strong are the 4060 transfer cases? I don't know. I don't know if that's a limit. And the 2-speed power glide from a lot of guys use those power glides because they're pretty strong. LS6 in my 71 Corvette, which it could have come with an LS6, but just a different one. Carbureted Brawler 750. 080 was an 87 casting. Okay. Yeah, I'm not too hip on those. 462 valve. I have lots of videos up on 462 valve stuff. I wrote a book on them. I've done lots and lots of testing on those. Dan, I don't think a glide's gonna like 1500 horsepower. A stock glide is definitely not gonna like that. No teenagers ever liked Chevettes. Tell them it's a Corvette. You just tell them it's a vet. That's what everybody says. What about a twin turbo 434? Is a dedicated? Can you give us CFM specs boost versus NA for what? Carbureted LS Chevelle. I wanted fuel injected down the road, but got 5 boys. Needle and thread budget. That's good. You got to do what you got to do, man. Both the 4-valve and the 2-valve mod motors definitely need boost. I mean, they're lacking displacement and they're kind of lacking torque, and so it's a big help when you have boost with them. Danny, I don't know what you mean by can you give us CFM specs boost versus NA? I don't know what you're asking for there. I kind of like transmission with more gears in them. I've always been a manual person, only because I was always more of a road racer. But if I was racing at the drag strip and trying to be consistent every time, I think I would pick an automatic rather than a stick, even though a stick would be funner. But if you're making your living doing that, you want to, you want to have it be the same every time. What's going on with my sound? I have to upgrade my stuff here. How's my sound quality going? If you guys lose sound, leave and come back, then it fix it for Ferris. New Chrysler is a Chrysler 300 is a 6.4 with 485 horsepower. They say it's the last Chrysler muscle car before you go all electric. So you got to go. Everyone's got to run out and buy those, right? Because they're going to be classics. EMP related. I need to go watch Skinwalker Ranch. Actually, one more minute. It's time. I'll try to keep the mic away from the computer over there. What do you think about a water cooler configuration for boost application on a daily car? I like it. Like I said, I ran it in my Sprint forever and it worked great. Dyno time on the 2.2. Yes, we will have dyno time on the 2.2, both on the chassis dyno once I get the Omni back, and maybe even before that, if I could go back and we can arrange some chassis dyno time back there, and then also on the engine dyno time. Michael, yes, you need an intercooler, even with a remote turbo. YouTube cutting out the politics. You're not going to find very much in the way of politics here. The truck trans is working great. It's worked fantastic since we put it in. Russell, a 5.3 LS will make a lot more power. In fact, a 5.3 LS will make, unfortunately, will make supercharged 2-valve power, and then anything that you did to the 5.3 would be much better. And then the potential for that motor would be way greater than anything that you do to the 2-valve. The dual Hayabusa headed Radical does 400 horsepower. That's kind of cool. So when you're rebooted, you got the sound back. That's good. You're just in time for me to get going. Does your truck have the towing package with the external transcooler? It does not have an external transcooler. I thought that it did because it is a Z71 and it has a tow package on it, but it does not have an external cooler. It has an internal one in the radiator. German's got nothing to do with it. Yeah, you gotta love Jackie Gleason. Most automatics have transcoolers. When you tow, don't tow in overdrive. So you're going to drive 5,000 miles in third gear. Doesn't seem like a very good idea. I'm kind of curious what the tow haul would have done if I engaged that. I didn't. I mean, most of the time is spent driving 70, 75 miles an hour or whatever with the cruise control on, just rolling down essentially flat roads, maybe some rolling hills and stuff. Going up the hills, I think, was the problem with this thing. So we will close out our poll. 67% saying no, they've never had a boost line come off. Thank you guys all. It's time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up, and I'm gonna be moving that over like I'm important. Nobody wants to look at me anyways. Can I use an oil cooler from my Silverado on my 400 small block? I'm installing it in. Yes. An LS is a good thing for a Chevette. Somebody maybe tomorrow night can explain to me what, if they know what the parameters are for tow haul. If you do, you know the logistics. Do you know exactly what happens when you push that button? What does it do? What does it change? I want to know. Does it reroute pressure? Does it? What does it do? And should you have that on all the time when you're towing? So that'll be for tomorrow, and you guys can let me know. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow.